Cheers!
Hey,
Happy Wine Wednesday! Here we are, Canadian wine lovers, Carl's Wine Club members, Mira Boucher. It's
Carl Boucher.
Wednesday. It's 5
Cheers.
p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, and it's time to talk Canadian wines. It's time to share what's happening in the world of Mira and Carl, and this is really freaking exciting.
Exactly. So there's only one word missing in this billboard here. If you're waiting for a sign that you should open a bottle of wine, this is it. I think it's just Canadian. It should say,
Yeah, just a Canadian flag in between the of and wine, right?
yeah, just a
Yeah,
bottle of
that's it.
Canadian
Very
wine.
simple.
This is it.
This is
So if
it.
you are tasting some Canadian wine tonight, tell us what is in your glass. If you're tasting other wine, that's okay. We want to know too what you're up to. And if not, tell us, a wine that you've tasted recently. Maybe that's interesting for others to discover, because we're all about building the community of Canadian wine lovers, raving
Well, what
fans
I want to know it's
of
what's the
Canadian wine.
when is the last time you tried? But I'm not saying you as you, Mira, but I'm saying you as listener, you as Canadian wine lovers, you as Carl's Wine Club members, you everywhere in the country. When is the last time that you've tried a new winery? Something completely new, something
Yeah.
who's just starting, something you've heard from a friend, or like when is the last time and which winery it was? That's what I want to hear. Okay, so yeah, let's do a poll here. Okay, I want to know. I want to see some names. I want to see some new names, because this week we're featuring a new player on the Niagara wine scene, and that's a little bit how we phrased it in our email this week. It's about the excitement of finding a new winery, the excitement of tasting wines from a new producers, and the excitement of seeing to benchmark them side by side with other like known commodity, known producer that we know exactly vintage in and vintage out, how they produce their wine. And the excitement of seeing that difference is just, to me, it's just palpable. And this week, that's exactly what we're going through. And yeah, it's Black Bank Hill week. So
Yeah. And I think Black Bank Hill, it's exciting because new winery, but right out of the gate, they checked off some of the boxes that we don't often expect a new winery to check off. So highly rated wines. There's quite a few rock stars, right?
like much more than expected. That is a fact.
Yeah. And then
So
what are some of the other boxes that they checked that were kind of an unexpectedly good surprise when we're trying out a new winery?
well, I mean, there's that, like, like that's the site like the site typicity. Like when we talk about let's say 20-mile bend Chardonnay, there's a certain thing that I came to expect from a 20-mile bend Chardonnay, and boom, out of the gate, that 2020 Chardonnay from Black Bank Hill with providing me everything from I was expecting from a 20-mile bend Chardonnay. And God knows that there's some pretty big players who make Chardonnay from the 20-mile bench and some world-class Chardonnay. And that $35 Chardonnay absolutely blew my socks off. And there's
And I
many,
mean,
many.
it helps because that Chardonnay is from, what's the vineyard again that it's
It's from Wingfield Vineyard.
Which some of our favorite wines are from that very vineyard.
Absolutely. You want me to be a name thrower here, like Thomas Batchelor, like one of the rock star of its portfolio is from the Wingfield Vineyard. So I mean,
we actually had it the other night, didn't we? We got to share this, Carl. So we had a big, beautiful box of Batchelor show up.
Yep.
And you know what showed up the next day last week for my belated birthday? These guys showed up.
That was a heck of an evening. So, but you know what? That the Black Bank Hill Chardonnay was right in the lineup that night between Meyer 2011 vintage Meyer cuvee, between Batchelder, and like there was lots of big names. We had some Saint-Romain from Burgundy. We had some Chardonnay from all over the world. And that $35 Black Bank Hill Chardonnay, believe it or not, was one of the conversation of the night. So,
Good.
like, I mean,
Because
that's what I mean
side
by
by side, a bunch of wines that are sometimes double the price, and it was really holding its own. So
absolutely. And well, and like, okay, let's talk about these boxers. Like a new producer who's like highly rated wines right out of the gate, farming their own home vineyard. This is something like it's not, they're just not coming as a, and nothing wrong with virtual winemakers. I'm not saying that, because we know lots of virtual winemakers and they do fantastic jobs. But
and I
Black
think these
Bank
guys
Hill,
started the first few years were virtual, right?
yeah,
Working with
they've decided, like, they found a 22 acres of vineyard. Well, it was not a vineyard. They absolutely have transformed an
yeah.
orchard.
And they planted it, I think, to 12 varietals. But you know what's great, Carl, is we actually have the founder who's willing to take time out of his day. I know they probably just finished harvest and they're probably exhausted at the winery, but the founder, Taylor Emerson, is actually in the green room and ready to join us so he can share the story from the horse's mouth.
Okay, but before Taylor is joining us, I just want to say that, yeah, we have a really rock star lineup. And if
Absolutely.
you're willing to give a try to a new winery this year, if you haven't tried nothing new this year, that was my whole thing. I wanted to know when, and what was the last time you try a new winery. If you haven't, make it a point that this week is the week, because this is worth it. I absolutely fell in love with the Viognier. And I mean,
That's something
I
else
can't
too.
I can't stop talking about it, right? I mean, it's been a week now,
And
and I keep.
Fiona is not usually like one of those that Carl can't stop talking about. So it is truly outstanding. And we've done a few posts the last couple days about this Viognier, about the Black Bang Hill wines, and few people are commenting back saying, "Yes, I've tried it, and yes, it's amazing." So
Well, and
definitely worth
Mira,
a check out.
that we've tried a lot in the last 2 years, lots of Ontario wines, and this is without a shadow of a doubt, the best Ontario Viognier that I've tasted in 2 years. That is absolutely, without a doubt, this is in, like, yeah, amazing.
Amazing. All right, are we ready to bring in Taylor Emerson from Black Bank Hill?
Bring it in.
Can't wait to hear the story. Taylor, welcome. So nice to see
Good
you.
evening, guys. Hello.
Hey,
Great to see
great to
you.
see you. Yeah, thanks for taking
Great, good.
the time.
I'm enjoying just sitting off screen watching you guys and your enthusiasm and your energy and your passion for the wines. It's inspiring. Thanks. You guys are doing a lot for Canadian wines. We really appreciate it. It's great.
Taylor, we wouldn't be sitting here singing the praise of what you do without the passion and without what you've done since started between you and your cousin. And like, you guys show the passion and the desire to be at the top. And this is so very freaking inspiring, even more when I get my nose in the glasses and when I start dissecting these wines and tasting what you guys are doing in such a short period of time. This is just amazing. First, I want to congratulate you and
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Jonathan, your cousin, who's been with you since
Yes.
a year now. But what you accomplished in a very short period of time is amazing to be here with you.
Well, you're very kind. It's been a roller coaster, nothing less, I got to admit. But at the end of the day, is get you guys getting excited. We're all wine lovers here, and we're doing it for the same reasons you guys are doing it. And it's as quaint as it almost sounds. We really are just doing it to make some great wines, and to I think also Canada's ready. Where I feel like there's this energy, we're on the cusp of showing the world what Canada can do from a winemaking perspective. And we've been a little quiet, a little hesitant, but I think I can feel that change happening. And it's a very exciting time to be in the Canadian wine world. There's some really nice stuff. There's a lot of new producers, and I'm tasting better wines each vintage, not only from new players but also from existing players. So it's a great time to be here.
Oh,
And you know
absolutely.
what, Taylor, I cannot agree more. Like Mira and I have been seeing for a
Yeah.
very long. Oops, sorry. Are we? Is there a lag here between me and you, Mira? Or
No.
okay, sorry.
Oh, unless there was a second ago, I tried to say something, but
I
you
was
go.
I was just agreeing with you, Carl.
Mira, I know. Well, Taylor, I know that Mira is dying. Like, well, both of us, like, we're dying to backtrack and go back to your England day. And we want to know the story because you know what? At the end
Oh,
of the day, we're not wine expert. We're storyteller. Okay.
sure. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we Amir and I, but also the listener, our members, we want to know the story. We want to know how, from your days in England, of all country, not France, not Italy, not Spain, not Argentina, no, England. When your journey in England, how everything started, and you ended up back home in Niagara. Please, the floor is yours, and tell us your story, for God's sake.
Wow. Well, okay. I'm happy to. Um, Actually, you mentioned Spain. Spain was a part of it. So anyway, I became a wine lover like, 20 years ago. Okay. The ball had dropped in my world, as it has for all of us here. And I was going to Niagara a fair bit, learning a lot about wine. I grew up in Toronto. I didn't even know that Niagara existed, but discovering all these wineries, particularly on the escarpment side here where we are now. This is where I ended up. Never thought I'd get into wine, but actually that's not true. I even about 10 years after that, I planted some grapes up where Black Bank Hill is. Black Bank Hill is a farm north of the city on the way to Creemore. It's on the escarpment. And I thought, oh, geez, I wonder how far we can push this cool climate thing. Anyways, I wasn't prepared. I had a full-time job. I was very busy. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about vines to keep them alive. But hey, you know what I got? I got about a dozen really beautiful Chardonnay grapes that were smaller than my pinky fingernail. Tiny little beautiful Chardonnay grapes. But I was just a wine lover, and I had a career, and the career took me to Spain for a year. Spain was an important step on my wine journey because, growing up in Ontario, we all drink a lot of international wines, and that's kind of our education, the LCBO. That's the context. And that's the context that Niagara is still struggling against, really, to get true
That,
understanding locally of what's
yeah.
going on. There's lots of reasons, but one of them is just the structural aspect of how we buy wines and the distribution of wines and the prevalence of wines in
You're
our
opening a can
culture.
of worm here, Taylor. You're opening a can of worm. We can slide very quickly.
It goes everywhere. It's just we can
Yeah.
slide around. Uh, in any case, I fell in love with Spanish wines. So they were an interesting part. But that job took me from Spain to England, where it ended. Um, and I knew I was going to work for myself, but I don't think I had at that point given myself like like I never really gave myself the permission to think that I could do this. Do you know what I mean? Wine was still like in the unreal possibility phase of things. But I just had some time off. I took a WSET course. I was in downtown London. The WSET headquarters was across the bridge. I'd grab coffee, walk for 45 minutes every day. It was just great. It's just a dream. I was like free for the first time in a decade. And by the end of that course, I discovered this place called Plumpton College, which was an enology and viticultural school in Sussex, England, in the heart of the sparkling wine region in England, and run by a guy who was the vineyard manager of Chateau d'Yquem. His mother was French, his father was English, he was half and half. Uh,
So
and
you're
he
saying
started
that your teacher was the vineyard manager at Chateau d'Yquem?
at one time. At one time, yeah.
What?
Yeah, he started the school. He worked there in the 70s and the 80s, I think. And
Holy moly!
yeah, no, it's a serious school. It's the only English speaking school in Europe. He was quite academic, although you think of a vineyard manager as he had a career in academia and then he got into the wine world and then he went back into wine academics. Quite
Hmm.
interesting. But it was a great school. I did that for 2 years, and about three-quarters of the way through that program, I started flying back here. I realized that if I was going to do this, it was going to be in my home. And it was related to terroir. It was related to the idea that wine is an expression of land, but also of people and of place, and we're all connected. It's grapes, human beings, places. It's all coming together, and it was part of expressing that desire to create wine was being a Canadian and going back home. And also, you realize you're living in Europe. What I'm not going to add anything to the European wine world. It's they've reached a level of sort of perfect. Although it's always changing, it's formalized. The rules are set, and Canada presented opportunity and innovation and all sorts of fascinating, interesting things that made sense. So literally it was a pretty quick, just a personal thing. And I started it, and you can go to school, you can prepare, you can try to get as much knowledge and talk to as many people, but you really can never really be prepared for what you're going to have to learn to do. And in this first couple of years, I'm going to bring Jonathan into the conversation because that's where the story gets more interesting, really, is Jonathan had been working in British Columbia for 10 years by that point. And I was making the wines in 18 and 19. I was virtual. And I started calling him, and we just started chatting a lot about winemaking and getting his input. And initially, he was very, very keen on BC, and still is, and still very connected to the place. But he didn't initially see Ontario as a natural fit. And then as that conversation evolved, it happened. And he's taken the program, not just the winemaking, which is his deep expertise, but also the viticulture here up a major, major step. Going to school for a couple of years and being a wine nut and having all that drive is one thing, but he had the opportunity to work in the Okanagan under major experienced winemakers at different top estates, and
we're talking, I think we mentioned like Tantalus,
I think it was with
Creek.
Mark. Was it? Well, yeah, it was with Mark Anthony Brand as well when he was at Cedar Creek. So we're talking about big company here.
And and Leviathan,
Comina, I think. Yep.
Tantalus. So he's the type of man, his mind, he can absorb information from different people and just sort of incorporate it into his own style. And so that, and it's not like we're a tight family. It's not like John and I had spent a lot of time. We got into this separately, and we sort of found each other on our own journey. So it's been really exciting. And he joined me in the beginning of 21.
Oh, neat.
He joined me in 21. So I had
Great.
3 years of sort of planting a vineyard. 21, John joined me. 22, we built the building, the barn, what we call the barn, the wine production space. And got all our licenses in 22 and did our first harvest last year, and we just finished our second harvest.
Congratulations.
We're still making the wines. We're going to press Cab Franc off the skins tomorrow, put it in barrel.
Okay, now we're skipping ahead. Because I want to know exactly. Okay, so the vineyard is planted in the Lincoln Lake Shore appellation, correct?
Yeah, that's where we are. Yeah, just east of the town of Beamsville, just north of King Street, the wine route. And we're just sloping off the escarpment. We're in a really neat spot, close to Kew, between sort of Kew and Malivoire. The escarpment comes right up to King Street at this point. And so it's still sloping down. It's not, I wouldn't call it the bench, but it's like a lower bench, nice slope off there, great exposure, benefiting from the warmth and the circulation from the escarpment in the wintertime. But clear of any shadows, great open air. And it's one of the projects we did at school. I think wine program would be sort of like analyzing a vineyard site, consulting project. And you can look at all sorts of aspects, soil aspect, environment, grape varietals, and you put all those things together. And so I had some knowledge, but honestly, the site is surprised me in many ways that I would never have known. And you can only do that by farming it for a few years and learning it and seeing how the grapes respond. And that's where we're at now. I mean, we're sort of 6-7 years in, and I mean,
So
this year
when you found that site, Taylor, you found a site that was not a vineyard already. It was not a vineyard. It was an orchard, correct?
it was a family fruit farm. In the 19th century, it was like a dairy farm, and in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was farmed as a family fruit farm, which is a interesting story because the old barn is falling down, but it's still there, and you can show people sort of remnants of it. You know, cherries, peaches, plums, pears, apples, vines, grapes as well, table grapes. Um, and they brought up 4 kids in a small farmhouse, picking the fruit, putting it in the cold. They had a cold room attached to the barn. They'd pick it, they'd put it in there. 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, they'd be loading up the Chevy pickup, driving it to the food terminal on the Gardiner Expressway in Toronto. I'm being very specific, but if you're driving into the city, it's still there, and it's where a lot of most of the food for the city comes in. And they brought up 4 kids that way. The property was for sale. It was being cash cropped. The parents had passed on, the kids had owned it, and it was right beside Kazan Vineyard,
Okay.
which
So
is right
we
on the
know
corner.
Kazan Vineyard for I think its Leading Post made their Syrah from Kazan Vineyard, I believe.
So that was one of my big markers, exactly, Carl. And I knew that wine and thought it was tremendous. It still is tremendous. And I planted some Syrah. Now, I didn't was not that knowledgeable about Syrah at the time in Ontario, but I knew that wine, and I said, if this area can ripen Syrah like that, we've got something. I really like the soil. I like the heavy clay soil, mitigating the vigor of the vines. I like the location to the wine road, to King Street right there. I like the proximity to the escarpment. There were a lot of good signals. It was 22 acres. It was the right size. There was no expensive houses on it, making it way out of my price league. Do you know what I mean? It was like an old beaten up farmhouse, an old beaten up barn, and 22 acres. And I was like,
I love it. I love it. All the stars aligned, right?
well,
it was like, so, I mean, and you just, by that point, you've decided, okay, screw that. The old career is behind me. I'm jumping 100% in the new venture.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And at that point, like, you knew you're going to farm and you're going to make the wines. You're going to do the whole thing on your own.
The concept was always that growing grapes and producing wine happen to happen together in one place. And the name of the place, the Black Bank Hill, I still describe it primarily as a vineyard. And Jonathan and I both spend more time in the vineyard during the year. Well, he more than I, particularly now that we've got the tasting room and I'm dealing with the sales side. But the wines are really grown in the vineyard, the quality of the wines. You learn the first thing you learn with the vineyard is that, it's the grapes that you bring in that you're tasting in the bottle. So that Viognier, that 21 Viognier, that's our first Viognier from the vineyard.
Yeah.
That's the fruit that comes in that way. We crop it really low. We want to get that ripeness. We know you need to get that phenolic development and those sugars to get those flavors. And so we're just cropping it. And actually, we're still learning at which cropping levels we can. And we took
What's the balance of the vineyard? What does your site allows you? Because I think, as we know, right? It's not because less is better. It's what's the balance between what your site will provide you.
Yeah, and for a first try, it's pretty spectacular. So it's exciting.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm getting your reaction to that wine is just, that's why we do it. because
I
when
have
people
to tell our listener, Taylor. I have to tell our listener. Last week when I tried the Viognier for the first time, I'm trying it. I'm just losing my mind at the table, and I'm banging the table, and I'm doing all of these weird stuff. And Mira's like, "What's going on?" And I'm just like absolutely losing my mind. And she said you should send him a note, let him know. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're darn right about that." I just picked up the phone and calling, and I said, "What you're doing?" I said, "You know what? I'd rather to tell him this is fucking awesome."
and I
So
got
that
your
was my
call.
reaction.
Yeah, he even picked up, and it was like late because we're out here in BC 3 hours behind you guys. So.
I was tired, but I was standing up still. It was okay.
That's
I'm always
awesome.
there to take a call.
Awesome.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic. It's like for being the first release of that Viognier is just amazing. My question, I want to get back to the vineyard side because
Yeah.
did you had in mind specific grape that you wanted to plant, or the site just dictated what you were planting, or you went into that with very, very idealistically, okay, I want to build my winery with these grapes, or you went there and you're like, okay, that's what my sites needs? Was the thought process there?
The thought process was these are my favorite wines from Niagara.
Mm.
Not, and I knew there were other grapes that did really well in Niagara. And there were, I'll give you an example. Riesling. Everybody say, Taylor, why didn't you plant Riesling? And I go, okay, I'm a Riesling fan. I am. But it wasn't one of the ones that grabbed me from Niagara, and I can't explain why. It's just whatever the profile, right? So we planted Chenin Blanc instead. I know I needed a high acid, clean, sort of mineral driven, aromatic white wine, but I said let's try something different. So we planted the Chenin Blanc. We'll have our first Chenin Blanc in 23 from this vintage.
Woo.
Those
Single
vines went
varietal.
on. Those vines went on their own journey to get to where they are today. That's another story. But for example, like I knew Pinot Noir, okay, so and Cab Franc, but I'd had a couple Merlots that I really liked as well as, and I took a little bit of forward-looking sort of thinking about the climate and where we were, and people were pulling out Cabernet Sauvignon. I didn't plant a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, but I wanted to plant a little bit. Viognier, for sure. I discovered that in Niagara. I didn't even know that Fielding originally had it. And I was like, this is, I love the aromatic varietals. Gewürztraminer, we've planted some Gewürztraminer. That's going to be dynamite. I mean, that is a grape that on this site performs, I think, as well anywhere in the world as it can. It's just, I just think it's dynamite on this site. What else am I missing? Chardonnay and Pinot, of
Yeah.
course. And those are like, Niagara just makes such, there's, you were talking about earlier, just the consistency and number of good Chardonnays from this area. And Pinot Gris. So I had a little Alsatian thing. I always felt Alsatian white wines have been underrepresented, not only Niagara, but just underappreciated around the world. Beautiful aromatics, weight, texture, um, just a lovely style of wine. But they're often, I'm not talking about Pinot Grigio. I'm talking about low cropped Pinot Gris.
Alsatian, the Alsatian Pinot
In a
Gris, the one
yeah,
with
yeah,
body and
body,
texture. Yeah,
body.
I know, eh? It's one of the
That's
noble grape of Alsace.
yeah, absolutely. And so that was it. And Mira, you're right. I was really impressed. You said 12 varietals because uh, some of the Shannon we planted in 8 rows didn't do so well. We didn't get the greatest plant material at that time, so we consolidated that into 4 rows, and then John had joined me by that time. So in 21 we planted 2 rows of Marsanne and 2 rows of Roussanne because we knew we had this Rhone kind of style little program happening that was already showing itself. And so we'll have a barrel each of Marsanne and Roussanne. Also, Q had a great Marsanne that I would buy just up the road beside us. And I'm like, there's something happening in this area with these Rhone varietals. And I didn't know. It's not like I knew. I was just like going with intuition and gut and hoping something nice would come along. And both our Syrah and our Viognier are right now, the excitement that they're showing is tremendous.
So speaking about Syrah, we have Mira. Do you tell the news to Taylor, or do
I
you
can
want me
tell
to
the
do
news. Let's keep it. Oh, Taylor knows. Yeah.
He knows.
We had this, so we'll tell our members. Before we do get to the Syrah, though, quick question from Daryl. What is your tasting room hours like if you were to order for pickup? Like, do you have certain times that you're almost always there, or how does that work?
Right now, just send me a note and I'll coordinate with you. Between when harvest starts and basically Victoria Day, we're basically by appointment. So if you want to do a tasting, there's a tasting calendar on the app, on the website app. You just book an hour. All the appointment spaces are there. But if you just want to do a pickup, just order online. Shoot me an email, taylor@blackbankhill.com, or give me a call.
He's been pretty quick to respond, Daryl, on email, and there's also phone. But yeah, if it's one of those things where you're happening to be driving by, you're not sure quite what time or what day, I'm sure Taylor can figure something out. Hey,
we will plan it. I mean, it's really literally the two of us, and we're just not sitting in the room waiting for somebody. But I live on the property, so I had a guy today who just called, and actually he was a lovely fellow with his wife, showed up. And he just called me. He said, Taylor, we just heard about you, and are you available? I said, when did you want to come? And they met me in 35 minutes. So
perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. That's
it's very easy. It's very
so
easy.
nice
We're
to
here.
be living there. Yeah, that's the other thing that we were really impressed with you as a new winery, how hands-on you've been, tending to your vines, living on site. I think it's really part of the reason maybe why you've hit the ground running with such fantastic results from right from the get-go. But hey, we were talking about the Syrah, which we were so excited to taste, Carl and I. And then last week, unfortunately, it was corked. So we said we can't score it. We can't taste it right now. Taylor was so awesome to overnight us a package that was supposed to arrive this morning, and it was on the truck for delivery at 10:30, and at 10:31 it said sorting error, will be delivered tomorrow. So I think Carl and I have to do a post or go live when we get that bottle. Hopefully it's not in too much bottle shock and we can tell all the members what it's like.
So,
but for now, we have to rely on Taylor's story.
I think the wine is just trying to create a suspense for everybody.
That's it. Exactly. So now let me jump in, because there's a few things here. Okay. First and foremost, Mira and I, both of us, are Syrah fanatics. Chardonnay is our biggest love, but when it's time for red, Syrah is right up there. It was my first love when I started in the wine business. The Rhone Valley was my absolute first love, even before Burgundy. And I have a sweet spot for Syrah. Second, it's from the 2020 vintage. And I know all the potential from these, the later varietals and like the big boy varietals. So that I'm very excited. Also, I've tasted the 2019 that was the first wine that I tasted from you. And I replied to you right away. I give it a 92 plus points. I love the old world, this aspect of it. I really, really love the balance and the complexity. And I knew the 2020 had something special. Now, another thing, there's only a tiny amount of that 2020 Syrah available. First and foremost, Taylor made 48 cases of that Syrah. Second of all, he's pouring it in the tasting room, and he goes out like hot bun. Like, I mean, like everyone who tastes that wine wants to buy it. And I'm like, and I kindly asked a couple months ago, can you please put some aside for us? So finally, Taylor put 48 bottles of so 4 cases aside just for the club. And it's running out, and I'm just like, I want to taste it. I want to talk about it, and now they're playing with my nerve.
It's just toying with us. The wine is just toying with us, Carl.
I know. And when we're talking about creating that sense of excitement, I think this is it, right?
I can't. I really need to be there when you open this bottle of wine. Not there, but here.
Yeah,
I know,
sure.
right? I know. Now, something I think social media is gonna explode at the moment that the bottle arrives. Something's gonna happen. No, I'm really excited to taste it.
In a nutshell, Taylor, tell us what we need to know about that Syrah before we taste it.
Oh my! It's okay. It's the first Syrah from the Black Bank Hill Vineyard. The 19 was from Park Vineyard. The exceptional wine, but different terroir, slightly different terroir. The nuances of the bench and the 20 mile, slightly more of that bloody, irony, savory profile. Also 19 different lighter, not a lighter vintage, quite concentrated actually, but just not a warm vintage.
In terms of bricks, did you harvest? You probably harvest a little higher bricks from the 2020.
Actually, very same. I picked the 20s quite early because I guess my preference, and I'm changing this, or Jonathan, who's now in charge and responsible for that decision, really is we're letting it go a bit longer, but I always felt that I want to pick the grapes at the right time. I'm not trying to make a Californian wine. I'm not even trying to make a West Coast Syrah. This Syrah is totally Niagara. And what I mean by that is it's still medium bodied. There's great elegance, but with 20, you've got the concentration's unbelievable and the layers. I mean, it was a drought year. It rained like once in May and maybe once half of a rain in August one afternoon. And what we did, basically, we were cropping the vineyard at about 1 ton per acre that year.
Whoa.
Young vines, and we just wanted to make great wines. And we didn't know 2020 was going to turn out to be like 2020. So we were hanging just a light amount of fruit. And the stars aligned. I mean, it's a real gift, that wine. For that parcel of the vineyard, have that vintage to come out. And it's nice.
So,
it's special.
Taylor, was 2020 your first harvest at your own vineyard that produced? Oh wow!
Yeah. So
vintage of the century.
Well, it is a spectacular vintage, and those wines are still coming into their own. I mean, I haven't released the 2020 Cab Franc. The Syrah, the interesting thing about the Syrah is that it's ready, it's pleasurable, it's ready to drink at a younger stage than a Cab Franc is. And the Cab Franc is very servable, but it's not still fully become the wine that it's going to become. It's very interesting. The Syrahs, and the same in 19, the Syrah was just ready, pleasurable earlier. It's just part of the style of the grape.
That might be part of your style of winemaking too, because I'm just noticing in the Runaway 2020, this wine is coming together in the 4th or 5th days now. I have that wine open for at least 4 days now. And every day I feel like something more is happening.
Exactly.
I mean, it was great out of the gate, but the second day it was like, what? Oh, wow. And I asked Mira to change the score because my tasting notes was already done. And I said, Can you
Yeah.
please, at another point, we went to 92 points because this $30 wine
Yeah.
totally blew my socks
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. So, thanks, Carl. That's great. That's great. I totally agree. The wines here have longevity, and I'm always been a fan. My bias is always sort of giving wine more time, a little bit more age to really express itself. I find we drink a lot of wines before they've reached their peak, and as a passionate wine person, I want us to drink our wines at their best. And the wines we're growing here from this vineyard particularly will take time to do that. And I know cellaring is not a part of the modern world or anything, but I'm going to hold them a little bit longer before I release them to make sure that people are getting the full experience of them. Because I can open any wine, Carl, in the tasting room, and of the reds particularly, but even the whites, even the runway white that I'm drinking tonight. Um, this was opened about 3 days ago, and
Huh?
it's not blinking. It hasn't budged at all.
I want
And
to get back to what you're tasting right now because I noticed something when I tasted it. Every component of that wine play a role in the whole. Like I don't know if I make sense. I taste the
yeah,
Gewurz, and there's nothing scattered. Everything is well together. But then when I break it down and I focus my tasting notes on that, because you have
mm,
the aromatic of the Gewürztraminer, and at the other end of the spectrum, you got the bright acid of the Chenin Blanc, you got the glute of the Chardonnay, and you got the mid body of the Viognier. It feels like all of the components have their role. It's like a little family right in there. Like it's us, like the interaction is absolutely beautiful.
thank you so much. We feel the same way, and it's interesting. I don't know if it's still got in time. The grapes will totally come together, but I agree with you. You can actually taste each of the components in the wine still, and there's a fun little journey through the sip. I think the Viognier is still leading it. It starts with that, and then the Gewürztraminer is kind of just extending the aromatics a little bit, and then you get to that Chardonnay is the structure and the body of the wine, and then it finishes with the acidity and freshness of the Chenin Blanc. And I think that's what your tasting note said. So we're on the same page exactly. Um, in time, it was bottled in May. The Chardonnay and the Viognier both spent 18 months in barrel, so there's some nice development in neutral oak. It's not an oaky wine, but there's some nice development there. Um,
You're a big
and
proponent. You're a big proponent of wild ferment. I'm tasting it, especially the
yes,
Chardonnay,
yes,
the Cap Franc. Like there's some of the wine noticeably. I can feel the wild ferment. So that's something that you work with quite a bit.
that's always been our way. All the components of this wild ferment, almost all of our whites are fermented in barrel, and they are all wild. Uh, you know what? And that's not uncommon in Niagara. And we just feel it's adding more complexity. It adds more interest,
Absolutely.
and it makes the wines more unique. And it's part of the terroir. Gets back to just letting the wines be themselves, and it's just not necessary to be inoculating a lot of these wines in the first place. It's just a
So
comfort level.
wild ferment, neutral oak. That's to me, that's a little bit when I look at your style of what, like this, the
Mhm,
house
mhm,
style. That's
mhm,
probably what's
mhm.
very dominant in the term of how you make the wine. Yeah, neutral oak, 18 months usually, like especially for
Yep.
reds, and wild ferment. That's the house style.
You could call that the house recipe so far. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's
The
great.
winemaking is we're not trying to make that overly complex, really. We're trying to bring in grapes that have the characters that we're looking for. And then, you know what? We're happy to treat the winemaking side of it relatively consistently. And the differences then are in the grapes and the vineyard.
Beautiful. I'm reading Carl's notes, which I flashed up on the screen, and I'm thinking you're pairing, Carl, Provençal mussels or butter chicken and rice, like with that wine. And for
I
25 bucks, including tax, right? Like that is just spectacular. That's
And
something.
there's the and Mira, thanks for bringing that point because there was a reason why I choose these two because I wanted to show the diversity, the versatility of that runway white, and that's something you came up like to me was obvious. They're so versatile. Sometimes Gewurz can too much Gewurz can put a wine in the box in terms of there's a lack of versatility with Gewürztraminer sometimes when it's just too popping. And with the whole blend, I was like, geez, there's so much. That's why. And on purpose, I choose that classic Provençal muscle where it can be delicate, but also that butter chicken who can take some, like bring me some cool, like a lot with it. And he provides on both sides.
It's going to do Asian food, absolutely. It's going to do a lot of your classic French bistro dishes. And Jonathan really led the charge on these runway wines and their style. And we started with in this one, we started with the concept of the Chardonnay Viognier blend, which is not even a classic French blend. I don't know, it's sort of a semi-new world kind of, but it's the yin and yang of an aromatic and a non-aromatic grape that are both basically barrel aged and barrel fermented in that style. And the Gewürztraminer we didn't love it on its own that year, and it was just not the Gewürztraminer we want to launch as our first varietal Gewürz. So that came into this wine, and then Jonathan just felt that the acidity and freshness of that Chenin Blanc would just lift it up, which it absolutely does. So both this and the Runway Red, I would say, have that versatility with food pairing, and they both do that job really, really well. And we've made the price point accessible so that people can enjoy it and have it with their families, have it during the week. Not every bottle of wine should or needs to be a $30+ bottle of wine.
Okay, now I know this is your moment. We're talking about your story, but I have a fun story about Chardonnay Viognier blend. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 2015, I was hired by WestJet Airline to redo their entire onboard wine program. Okay. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of bottles of wine that you have to source. I have to source also from Canadian wineries. But anyway, so I went to the south of France for a big wine show down there. So, and when you introduce yourself as a wine buyer for an airline, you get a lot of attention. I'm telling you. You got a lot of attention. So I got this a co-op from the south of France who really wanted to meet me and how many bottles do you need, how many cases, and blah blah blah. So anyway, we set an afternoon tasting, and they're asking me about what I was looking for, and to me it was clear in my mind I wanted something approachable and something with a little bit of blend so I can avoid. I don't drink this. I don't drink that sort of like. I'm not a Chardonnay drinker or I'm not a this or that drinker, right? So give me a blend. And I got a bottle of Viognier and a good bottle of Chardonnay. I put 60% Chardonnay, splash of Viognier in it, and I slammed the glass on the table, and I said, this is what I want. I was a blend of 60% Chardonnay, 40% Viognier, and these guys turned around and they made, I think it was something 120,000 cases of that specific blend for a custom order. And that Viognier Chardonnay, to me, it's
nice. It's very nice and flexible.
That's it.
I read a stat somewhere in the South. Sorry, Mira, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I'll ask after.
No, I was just saying, I read a stat recently, sometime this summer, that Viognier was the fastest growing varietal in like the south of France for a lot of those, big vineyards that produce a lot of grapes. But people are realizing what a great blending component it is, and it can make a lot of the more neutral wines really interesting really quickly.
You're up.
Well, I was just saying, how did we get on this topic? Is it because the Runway White has Chardonnay,
It's
Viognier?
Chardonnay
Yeah,
Viognier. That was the
yeah,
idea of the start.
yeah. That was the starting point. But what's interesting is both of those blends, and this is for me, it's the strength, but it also confuses people. These are not blends. When you think of those 4 varietals or the Runway Red, the 5 varietals, they're not classic blends. They're off piece. So people, if you go into the wines thinking, I'm expecting something like a formal blend of a established recipe, you're going to get confused because they're not that. You kind of have to forget about the grapes a little bit, and you just have to kind of taste the wine like with an empty mind, and just we're not trying to create a new blend. We're just trying to create a really nice wine. And we're just listening to the grapes from this vineyard and letting them direct us where to go as much as possible. Keep our minds empty and open and clear, and follow that. And it might be this blend is not set in stone. This is like version 1 for that vintage of those ingredients from that year.
This is chapter 1 of the book, right?
Exactly.
And you're writing a new chapter every year. I want to know, how many cases did you produce, guys, from the first year? Let's say from the first year of the Lincoln Lakeshore Vineyard, the home vineyard. How many cases did you produce?
Like in 2020, when that first harvest was Carl, 7.5 tons of fruit. It's that Runway Red that you're drinking, the Syrah, and the Cab Franc.
Yeah, tiny, eh?
That's it. And so we purchased the 2 wines that are part of the offer. The other 2 we purchased for the 20 Mile Bench Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. That's our 2020 vintage right there. Yeah.
In 2021, you went up to how many cases?
It didn't increase tremendously in volume. I mean, we did 20 was like, it was still small. It was like 18 barrels or something like that.
Wow.
It wasn't big. I mean, and then 22 is half of what we thought it would be because of the cold event.
Right.
23 is our first. We processed about 42 tons this year.
Wow.
There you go.
That'll be about 2,200 cases around there, plus or minus.
Fantastic.
So this is our first real of volume. We've been making micro lots up until now.
And that's getting me where I wanted to. My question is, where's the sweet spot? Where Black Bank Hill wants to be, let's say in 5 years. Is the goal is to be a 10,000 cases production? Is the goal is to be a 5,000 cases? Or there's no case production target? You take it as it goes.
No, it's really interesting. In my mind, Black Bank Hills has no real ambitions to get large. In my mind, it was like 20 acres, 50 tons, 3,500 cases. And that would be about 3 years from now. But this year, the crop was so big, we did over 50 tons total grow this year, about 3 years ahead of schedule. We went from 15 tons to 50 something. So crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Now, with that concept, with that model, I'll tell you one thing. Like, there's a couple of SKUs you have to start a private club or something. Like, you have to be on the wait list to have access to these wines soon, because with that micro production and the quality of these wines, darn it, you're up to something.
That was always the focus. It was like one site, pure focus on quality, low production, and make that viable.
Yeah, no, I mean, kudos to you and Jonathan. I mean, what I have in my glass, it's fantastic. And I mentioned it earlier.
Thank you, man.
The excitement of what we do is to find new players who produce exceptional wines. And it's not like often you have to have that, you know, that ramping up period of time where wineries getting their feet wet. You're getting out there on the bang with the bang. I mean, this Viognier and this, like, I mean, I'm so excited to see what's coming up with you guys. Thank you for spending time with us, John, Taylor. It's amazing. I greatly appreciate that.
Carl, you guys make it really easy to hang out and chat. So
Yay!
it's my pleasure.
Cheers.
I mean, we're all wine freaks. I can talk about wine all day, and with you guys, it's easy. So thanks for having me, and thanks for helping us tell our story and supporting our wines. We really appreciate it. You guys keep up the good work too.
Thank you so much. Mira, do you have any last minute question for Taylor?
No, I think this is fabulous. I think we really appreciate that you came on the show, Taylor, because, you know, when you're newer like that, it's not everybody gets to come visit you in person. So it's a great way to find out a little bit more.
It's true. It's always great. Nice
Awesome.
to see you guys in person and chat more.
Great to see you too. Thanks for the late evening night on your side. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers to you, Taylor. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. Thank you. Very cool.
Really cool. Really cool. I live for these kind of stories. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Totally. I love that. The wines are so good. So yeah, I'm challenging our wine lovers. I'm challenging Carl's Wine Club members. I mean, if you haven't tried your new winery this year and you're saying like, I'm not sure, or oh man, go for it. These wines are just too cool. And yeah, I mean.
And let's do the rundown, because it's rare. Like, we often hear from members, oh, I'd like to see wine packs of 6, you know, at $35 or under, including tax, including shipping. And so that's about $200. And that's exactly what we have here with I mean, you can mix and match, but the pack that Carl selected, it's 6 bottles at $180 even, including tax, which is getting more and more rare. I mean, there's quite a few great value bottles in there, $25, $30, including tax. That's what brings the whole average down. And what's beautiful, like, especially around the holidays, if you have people over, there's a bottle for everyone in this selection. So if you get someone over that loves reds, you're going to have a few really nice reds to open. If you like whites, there's some fantastic whites.
The rosé is serious. The rosé is dry. The rosé is a little rustic. I love everything about that feature. And I mean, for $35, a $35 Chardonnay, you got a treat right there. The Viognier, like I mentioned multiple times, it's my top Viognier in like more than a year. Like over the last 2 years, I've not tried a Viognier that quality. The texture.
And it's their first one, so lots of good things to come from this winery.
Oh my God, there's so much. There's so much.
Yeah, and then we had the runway white. There's also 2 versions of the runway red.
The 21 and the 22, the 20 and the 21.
Exactly.
Yeah. And a fun story. We came to that kind of structure with Pearl Morissette on a certain vintage, that they release the newer vintage before the older vintage, because the older vintage need to rest a little longer. And that's what happened. Like that 2020 Runaway Red, you had to keep it longer and longer in the cellar because this wine needed to rest more.
And the 21, I think, was released before the 20, which is rare, but it's a testament to how dedicated Taylor and Jonathan are to listening to first the grapes and then the wines, right? And making sure that they're ready for us. So I think that's perfect.
And you know, for new wineries, sometimes like they don't have the choice in terms of, they have to get the product to market, and like to have that discipline to hold on until it's ready to go. Wow, this is very impressive. Really, really, really impressive. It fares very well for the future.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so 2 versions of the runway, 1 version of the runway white, 1 version of the runway rosé, the Chardonnay, 92 point Chardonnay, 92 plus point Viognier, 91 points Cab Franc, 91 points Pinot Noir,
Pinot Noir.
and that soon to be rated Syrah that I can't wait to.
Yeah, and because it's funny, we asked Taylor like which wine is flying off the shelf right now in the tasting room when people come visit, and he said, well, the Syrah is probably the big favorite. And he said, you know, Pinot Noir is a huge one too, the Chardonnay. So that's why part of why we're so thrilled. And also, like you said, you had the 19 Syrah. And although it's a different vineyard site, it gives you a glimpse into what these guys are capable of.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, lots of fun stuff with Black Bank Hill. So give it a try if you're not sure. Great pricing, great quality, new producer, and small. Like it's BC, it's small BC producer quantity, right? And even less, like I said, like 48 cases here, 55 cases there. Like their biggest production is 195 cases. So
yeah. And then if you're a Viognier lover, I mean, I think Viognier is a special kind of you know, fan club for Viognier, right? Like some people are not fans, and then there's people who swear by Viognier. So yeah, that's the pairing of the day. You and Viognier, if you are into Viognier, this is a must try, like an absolutely must try.
And there's that texture, but it's not overly extracted, too oily. Like there is that old style of Viognier where it was just like almost like a teaspoon of freaking the cooking oil. The thing is so thick. No, that's not what it is, though. Like, yes, there's a Southern Rhone style, but yeah, there's beautiful texture. The legs are crazy thick, but there's a freshness into it. There's a balance in that Viognier. There's a weight, but it's not too heavy. That's the key part. It's not too heavy. So, but there's that Viognier characteristic, the flood, the flower, the orchard fruit, the apricot, get that feeling like in late August when you bite in the ripe apricot.
Oh,
yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we got to go pretty soon. We are going to a Taylor Swift candlelight something concert, concert.
We're taking the kids out tonight. It's a night out with the Bouchers. Taking the kids out for a late night. It's going to be awesome.
Present for my our teenager, and so yeah, we're heading out. Go ahead, Carl.
Before we head out, we need to talk about next week briefly.
Yes, it's
because every year there's a key feature that we just can't wait. We kept that one secret for a while, but next week we're featuring Painted Rock. Yeah, it's been 2 years since we have featured them, and if we have not in the last 2 years, not because of a lack of trying on both sides, it just didn't have enough wine, and we beg a lot, John Skinner and Lauren, and we got a small allocation of wine for next week, and we are thrilled. We're going to do a 3-pack. We're going to do a 6-pack. I already cracked open the Red Icon 2020. It's going to be a long-term project. Put that in the cellar type of thing, but we have a cap solved. We have the new Syrah. I just had a crack to the Chardonnay, and it might be the best Chardonnay that they made to date, to my opinion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
that. So well
one.
balanced.
In my glass at the start of the evening.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Little amount of rosé, so we have some rosé. We have their Cap Franc, who's killing it in Europe right now, and we had the privilege to have a little batch put aside for us. I'm tasting the Syrah tomorrow, and you know what? I can't wait. Oh, you know what?
What?
We should do side by side Black Bank 2020 and Painted Rock.
Yeah, cross country. Same vintage or no?
There's two different. There's 2020 and 2021 for Painted Rock.
Still interesting.
But yeah, Painted Rock's coming next week, so I wanted to do a little tease here.
Right? That's what happens at our office.
I love it. That's too good. Too good.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a fantastic evening. You guys, it's so wonderful to connect with raving fans of Canadian wine, building that community. And huge thanks to Black Bank Hill founder Taylor Emerson for joining us live earlier. And huge thanks to you guys for stopping by, chatting Canadian wine with us. And hopefully you get a chance to try the Black Bank Hill wines, whether it's this week with free or reduced shipping or soon, as soon as you can, because this is one of the wineries of 2023 that we're super glad we discovered when we did, while it's still under the radar and you still have, you know, access to some of these really rare wines, and there's still the chance to get them at a fantastic price point.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mira Boucher. What a great show. I live for these kind of stories, so in small producers. So thank you. It was fantastic. Thank you to Taylor. So Canadian wine lovers, Cars Wine Club members, every one of you across the country, we wish you a good night and see you next time.
Cheers.